After playing chess for several days in a row, I was playing round 6 of the Botez Chess Invitational, and in this round, I was playing woman grandmaster Nemo. Now, Nemo is rated over 2200 and she's a woman grandmaster, so she's a very strong player, and I have played her a million times online and I've lost almost every single game against her. So today, when I had the black pieces against her, I knew that I was the underdog. I knew that this would be a very difficult game for me, and honestly, expected result should be for me to lose. She's higher rated, I have the black pieces, it was gonna be a tough game. However, I don't really like to think about these things when I go and play chess. I don't look at who my opponent is, I just play a game of chess and try to win. So I wasn't really thinking too much about it. We looked at each other, and then after that, we shook hands and the game started. People kept on saying, why is Anna staring at us? But I was only staring at the camera for the thumbnail picture that is used for this exact recap. Anyways, she played e4 and I was expecting this, and I played c5, so we were blitzing out our moves in the beginning pretty quickly. She played knight f3, I played e6, then she played d4, this is called the open Sicilian, and then I took the pawn and she took back. And after this, I pretty quickly played knight f6, threatening the e4 pawn, and then after that, she defended it. I mean, we weren't really spending a lot of time thinking here. We were just blitzing out moves out of memory. So I took out my other knight as well, putting it right in the center, and this, I was thinking that she was going to play knight b5, and this would become a kind of Sveshnikov, but that wasn't the case. Instead, after I played knight c6, she played a move that surprised me a lot, and that was that she played bishop e2. Now, bishop e2 is not really a scary looking move. I mean, the bishop is just moving one step, so it's not really aggressive in any way. However, I wasn't really expecting this, so I thought, okay, this will be a pretty long game where, well, you will see, but I'll basically get a pawn that will be a little bit weak, and I think she played this because she wanted to just get a very comfortable position for herself. And the truth is that after bishop e2, this is very nice and comfortable for white, even though it's a little bit slow. So she played bishop e2, and I played d5. After a little bit of thinking, I was considering both playing bishop b4 or d5, but I decided to play d5. There's a saying in the Sicilian that if you are able to play d5 with black in the Sicilian, then you're doing good. So you have to take everything with a pinch of salt, but, you know, there's a saying for a reason. So, I mean, I knew that this was totally fine after d5, and then she pretty quickly just took the pawn, I took it back, and now this is what we call an isolated pawn. Why is it an isolated pawn? Well, it's an isolated pawn because there's no other of my pawns that is defending it. I don't have any pawn on the e file, I don't have any pawn on the c file, which means that it's completely alone and it cannot be defended by any other pawn. So there's advantages to this, which are that it means that typically there'd be more diagonals and files that are open, which could give me more movement to my pieces, but it's also easier for Nemo now to attack this pawn for the rest of the game. So now the game is going to be a lot about not losing this pawn. That is basically everything that I'm going to be thinking about. So after spending some time thinking, I played bishop e7. My goal was just to castle. And then after that, she was playing really quickly. She brought her bishop out to e3, and I simply castled because that is what I wanted to do. I needed to get my king to safety. And then after she castled, it was time for me to think. And you know what this means. I've realized that I have a problem, and that is that when I don't know what to do, I think a lot. And this only happens when I don't really know exactly what to do. So here, the problem that I had was that I couldn't figure out if the move bishop e6 was good or not. And this may look stupid, but I couldn't really figure out if I could allow her to trade her knight for my bishop and give me a bad pawn structure, because my pawn on e6 would become really weak. So I couldn't figure this out. However, if I didn't put my bishop on e6, where would I go with my bishop? Well, I couldn't move it then. I didn't want to trade the knight on d4 because then she would be able to take it with the bishop and she would have a fantastic bishop on d4. So I was just thinking, okay, I guess I have to make waiting moves. What waiting moves do I want to do? The first one was pretty easy. So the first one that I did was h6, and that was good. That was a good move. However, now after play h6, bishop e6 is not so good anymore. And what I didn't know during the game was that actually I could have just simply brought out my bishop and it didn't matter if she took it, which is a lesson that I learned from the game. But I ended up playing h6, I just pushed my pawn one step, and Nemo pretty quickly just simply replied rook e1, and then I was in the exact same spot. I had to make another move, another waiting move, and this was so annoying. I spent so much time trying to figure out what to do over here, but yeah, I ended up just simply playing a6 after a while, and the reason I didn't really love this move was because I was scared that she was going to trade my knight, and then my pawns would be a bit weird. So I ended up playing a6, but this wasn't really a move that I loved to do because I was scared that she was going to take on c6 and that my pawns would get weird. But after I played a6, she pretty quickly just played rook e1, and now she had like 40 minutes more time than me. And I realized that it's completely like unlogical that I spend so much time on these moves, but it was really just because I didn't know what to do, and I kept on having this problem with the bishop. So at a certain point, I told myself, okay, Anna, we can't spend all of our time here. You have to move, you have to have a plan. And what I did was that I ended up just finally capturing the knight on d4 and then moving my bishop out to e6 because I just wanted to get that bishop out. It was time for me to get the rest of my development out, and I needed to get that bishop into the middle of the board. Now at some point over here also my computer died because I decided that I didn't want to charge my computer because I forgot to put it on charge. Anyways, we will continue here. But yeah, so I traded the knights and then I got my bishop out. Now, when I took her knight, she did a move which surprised me, which was that she took with the queen. I thought she would take with the bishop because if she took with the bishop, then her bishop would be constantly threatening my knight. That knight is the piece that is defending my d5 pawn. You remember, that's the pawn that I've been having issues with since the beginning. So I actually was really surprised that she took with the queen. I didn't think that taking with the queen was scary at all. The moment she took with the queen, I was very happy. I brought my bishop out to e6. And then after this, she spent a little bit of time thinking, but ultimately ended up playing bishop f3. Threatening a little bit more my central pawn. Now it was here that I realized that I need to get my rook into play as well. I need to get all my pieces into play, and what's really important is that I need to threaten bishop c5, because if I am able to trade my dark squared bishop for hers, I thought that would be a good trade, as my dark squares, as you can see on the squares b6, a7, c5, are very weak. And so if I get rid of her dark squared bishop, I thought this would be a good trade for me. So I pretty quickly understood that I had to go rook c8 and do these trades. After I went rook c8, she ended up playing rook d1, which was very logical. And then I played bishop c5 to trade the pieces. And after she moved her queen, I simply captured her bishop. And in this position, I was actually really happy with how things had gone. I thought that this would be an endgame that I actually thought I wouldn't lose. I thought from here on that I would very much be able to draw this game. So I was feeling really confident here. After I traded bishops, she captured back with the queen, and it was now that I had to kind of figure out how I wanted to set everything up. And so I decided that I wanted to bring out my queen because I didn't like it being on the same file as Nemo's rook. So I placed my queen on a5, and well, the game is looking right now pretty slow, but let me tell you, this game is going to be anything but slow. This game is about to take a very drastic turn very soon. But anyways, I ended up playing queen a5, and after I did this move, Nemo played rook d4. And I was a little bit surprised by this because it allowed me to place my queen on b6, and what I realized was that if I trade queens here, I will be quite happy with my position. I thought that the more pieces that I trade, the easier it'll be for me to draw, and to be honest, I was pretty happy with the draw this game, so I was only playing for a draw. So she went rook b4, and we traded queens, and after I took on e3, she actually captured back with the pawn, which to me was very surprising because yes, I understood that the reason she wanted to do that was because she never wanted me to be able to push my weak d5 pawn that has been weak ever since the beginning. But when she took with the pawn, I was very surprised because I felt like this would actually, in all endgames, be an advantage for me. That e3 pawn is a very weak pawn for Nemo. So I knew that if I trade a lot of pieces, I actually might have some good chances to be slightly better in the endgame, I thought. So I was really happy about this. Everything that I needed to make sure was that she couldn't capture my d5 pawn, which she couldn't really do yet. So she was threatening my b7 pawn, so I pushed it. And then after that, she retreated with her rook to threaten the pawn. And now it was the moment where I realized, okay, she cannot really take my d5 pawn, because then if she gets her knight out of the way, I'll take her c2 pawn and then my rook will be very active. So I was thinking for a while if I should play something like bishop f5 and threaten the pawn, but I like keeping my bishop there in the defense of the pawn. So after a while, I ended up actually playing rook c4 because I thought that she cannot take my rook, because then I'll take with the b pawn and then we see that the b file gets open. And when I have a rook left, I thought that would be a very almost advantage for me, because my rook would just be so strong. Also, I feel like I'm now just talking in chess terms, but this is the way my brain was thinking. I was so focused. I was thinking about so many different things. And I have to say that playing classical chess is so fun. You get to think about so much and you get to think about so many different lines, and it's so challenging, but it's so... I love it. Like, I love calculating. Calculating at chess is one of my favorite things. So, yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about different scenarios, but I ended up playing rook c4, and she was playing very fast here, which I was kind of surprised because I thought that this position wasn't the easiest. But we ended up trading. She ended up going rook d1, and after thinking for a while, I decided to play rook c8, doubling up my rooks, because I just thought that it would be a move that I would be able to benefit from, and I still didn't really think that she was going to take my rook. So I played rook c8, she played rook d2 to keep the pawn on c2 defended, and after this I thought, okay, let me improve my position, and so I just played king f8 so that my king would be slightly closer to the center. This is a very useful move. Kings are one of the most important pieces, and especially in endgames, kings are really important. I'm also looking at my hair right now, and my hair is an absolute mess. Like, Anna, what are you doing with your hair? Nobody knows. I was just thinking about chess. Anyways, king f8. Nemo now spends some time thinking, and ultimately, she ended up playing the move king f1. She also wanted to bring her king to the center, and so I thought, okay, if this is what we're going to do, then this is what we're going to do. At first, I was considering playing king e7, but then I thought, you know what? I don't really want her to have the opportunity of getting her king to the center. I really want to trade rooks. So I decided to trade her rook on d4, and after she took back, I brought the other rook as well. And now the idea was just that my rook is really active. I was thinking about maybe playing moves such as b4 if she ended up moving her rook. I thought if we trade rooks, I'll be slightly... not better, but it'll be completely equal, and I really liked my position because I saw a lot of ways my knight could move in the knight and bishop endgame, and I just thought that the squares that I had available for my pieces were slightly better than hers, and her light squared bishop was kind of bad, and the path that my king was going to take was very clear. So when she took back the rook and I played rook c4 and she ended up taking my rook and we ended up trading, I was actually extremely happy, and I thought, okay, I may only have 5 minutes on the clock, but I'm actually really happy about the position. So I went rook c4, she took, and now she played king e2. She was just bringing her king up to the center, and I was doing the same. It was very clear to me that my idea was to bring the king up to d6. And then she rerouted her knight, so she played knight e2. Now, I realized that I didn't have much time. I only had 5 minutes, and I had like 15 moves I had to do before time control, before I got 30 extra minutes. So I had to make the moves really quickly. I was trying to figure out what the best plan for me would be, and I didn't want to let her king enter the square b4, because I thought then if she enters the square b4, she might be able to play king a5 and attack my a6 pawn. So I ultimately decided to play king c5. She played knight d4, so she brought her knight to a good square, and I thought it's time for me to move my knight too. So I played knight d7. She played king c3. I only had a minute on the clock, but I ended up playing knight b6 because I wanted to be able to maybe play knight a4 check. That is what I'm threatening right now. So she played b3, stopping me from doing that, and I realized that I don't want to take on b3. I want to leave the pawn structure the way it is. So I didn't really know exactly what to do here. I only had 30 seconds on the clock, and I just played the move g6. I thought it wasn't a bad move. I didn't think she could take my bishop, but I was scared of her making a move such as e4 right now. But Nemo was playing here really fast, and I was kind of surprised about it because she had 44 minutes on the clock. I only had 55 seconds, but I think she was trying to play against my clock. Like, she was almost trying to flag me. So she ended up playing bishop e2, and I simply went bishop d7. I didn't really want to give her the option of trading the bishops anymore, and now it was time for her to think again. So she played h4. I wasn't really so scared about any of this. I ended up playing a5. It seemed like a good move. I typically want to put my pawns on dark squares because I have a light squared bishop, so my bishop can navigate better. So she played knight f3, and after knight f3, I didn't want her to get her knight into the game, so I played f6 to stop her knight from being able to go to e5. And then after this, she actually went back to d4, and I just felt really happy. I mean, it felt like my plan was very clear here. I played g5. She took really quickly, which I was very surprised about because it felt like a pretty big commitment to take that pawn. And she had so much time on the clock, but she was playing really fast here. I think, like I said, because she wanted to flag me, or she was hoping that I'd make a mistake when I was low on time. But I was actually more scared about her maybe pushing her pawn. But she took, I took, h takes g5, and now I have this position where I felt like I was slightly better. It felt like her g and e pawns were really weak, and I had maybe not such a good bishop yet, but I had quite a good knight, and I just saw this idea of moving around my king and trying to get my king to e4. So she started by playing bishop h5, which I wasn't really exactly sure what he was doing. I think she wanted to move her bishop to f7, but I played king d6, and now I just had a very clear plan. She ended up playing bishop f7, but now I could go king e5, and now my plan was to go king e4 and try to pick up that e3 pawn, because if she ever tries to defend it, I can maybe sacrifice my c pawn, and then if I'm able to take the e pawn, my king will be really close to the g pawn, and because her bishop is so far away from the game, I could maybe pick up the g pawn, and if I do that, I will have two passed pawns that will be connected, and I thought that could almost be a win for me. So I was actually here starting to play for the win, even though I only had a minute on the clock. After a very long time of thinking, she ended up playing bishop g6, stopping me from playing king e4. Now after this, I played g4, and the idea of this was that I didn't want her knight to go to f3, and my plan was to play f5 later on. So I wanted to kind of tie her bishop down to that part of the board, and I thought that with the pawns on g4 and f5, it would be hard to defend her e3 pawn. So after g4, she played a4, and now I had finally made my 40 moves. I had 30 minutes more on the clock, and I was feeling really happy about not having time trouble anymore. So I spent a little bit of time, but I knew that f5 was the idea that I had and the idea that I wanted to do. And she spent like 2 minutes here and ended up playing knight e2. And now it was the moment where I had to figure out how to try to win this game. So I spent like 10 minutes just trying to understand the position. Ultimately, I ended up playing king e4. She played king d2, defending the pawn. And at first, I was calculating all kinds of crazy things. But I ended up going back because I felt like my king was actually a lot better placed on e5, where it could not be checked anymore. And she went back to c3. Now here, I only had 9 minutes left because I had been calculating for so long, and I had to make a decision. Do I go king e4 and get a draw, basically, because she would have to go back to d2, and I was sure that after the king went back, she would go to c3 again, because all the other moves look really scary. Or do I play for a win? Now I knew that for me to be able to get a chance of getting top 3 in this tournament, I had to win today, because otherwise it would be impossible for me to get a top 3 place, and there's only 3 prizes. So I knew that I had to win today, but I also thought, a draw versus a 2200, that's a good score. So I spent a lot of time battling with myself. Anna, should you believe in yourself, or should you go for the draw? I felt like I didn't come here to just chicken out and get a draw. I thought that I have to come here and I have to fight in all my games, and if I don't do this now, then when am I going to do this? If I have a position where I'm better and I see a move that I truly believe is good, I need to I need to try. I need to give it a try. And I thought maybe I'll lose this game, and I had come to terms with that maybe I would lose this game, but I thought that I would feel like I had lost if I just ended up taking the draw. So for me, I realized no, I don't want to take the draw. I'm going to fight for the win. I'm going to believe in myself, and I'm going to push for it. And I saw this crazy idea of pushing my knight backwards to c8, which actually is the only move I can play for the win here. And I'm so proud and happy that I saw it. But I was really scared that she would go b4. This is why I was hesitating so much, because I thought b4, this when I have little time is really scary because I need to play very precisely, or she might just be able to queen with her a pawn. So I was really trying here to calculate everything, and after spending, I mean, in total, probably I spent 15-20 minutes analyzing this knight c8 move and calculating very far. I thought this was winning. So I had seen the next few moves. She played b4 pretty quickly, and I knew that the only move that I could do was knight e7, threatening the bishop. Now, I'm so happy that I saw this because, once again, knight e7 is the only move that wins. Any other move does not win. Like, if I take her b4 pawn, that doesn't win. And it's just because her a pawn becomes so strong. She has a passer that is just really strong, a passed pawn. Passer is slang for passed pawn, so if you want to be cool, say passer. Actually, if you're listening to this right now, type passer in the comments. But anyways, so I went knight e7, and here I realized that she started thinking a lot, because I think she realized that she could lose the game. And I was using the time that she was spending calculating, like, for myself, for me to calculate as well. So after knight e7, she moved her bishop to f7. I moved my king up pretty quickly. I had already calculated this. And after she took my pawn, I was first thinking, what happens if I go knight c6? But then I thought, no, I've already seen the whole line. Anna, let's just go for it. So I took the pawn on e3. I'm threatening her knight. And what I saw was that after the knight comes up to d4, which I thought was the only move, I have this move, knight c6, which is just so strong because it's threatening both the knight and the pawn. She cannot move the knight to a random square because then I will pick up the pawn. And if I'm able to pick up the a pawns, then I'm winning. So after knight c6, she actually ended up taking on c6, which I was kind of surprised about because I thought that this would be practically at least for me, it felt like the most comfortable way for me to play this, but I also understand why she did this. But I was more scared of her playing something like knight b5 or something crazy like this, because then I thought the position would become very messy. But yeah, knight takes c6. I took back the knight. And now she played the best move, which was bishop e6, threatening the pawn. And here, I decided to just play g3. I thought it would be the same thing if I played g3 or d4 check. So I ended up just playing g3. The idea of this is that if she picks up the pawn, I will push my d pawn one step, and then I will take the g2 pawn was my idea. But yeah, this was all very, very, very difficult, but I was just happy that I had time to calculate all of this in the previous, like, 20 minutes. So she also had gone down to 3 minutes. Like, she spent defending this 45 minutes to try to figure this out. Now, here she ended up pushing the pawn to a6 instead of picking up the pawn. And now I realized that, well, at first I was thinking about playing d4 check, but this move would actually have drawn the game here now because of the fact that she's pushed her pawn one more step and is one move closer to promoting. So now the only move that wins here, literally the only move that wins, is f4, with the idea of pushing the pawn to f3, eliminating the blocker of my g pawn, and then promoting my g pawn to queen. So yeah, in this moment, something kind of dramatic happened because She started thinking for a long time. She had a minute 53 here, and she thought for a very long time to the point that she had 10 seconds on the clock. And I realized that she only had 10 seconds on the clock, and I actually thought she was gonna flag. So I was in my brain going 5, 4, 3. She had still not made a move. 2, and then she makes a move, hits the clock, and the clock drops down to the floor. And I don't know if she has lost on time or not. I look at the clock and I see 31 seconds, and I see, okay, she hasn't lost on time. But then I felt like the place her bishop had gone to was f5. But then, she wanted, then the bishop was on g4. And I just didn't really exactly know what was going on with where the bishop was. So we both agreed that the best thing would be to just have the arbiter check out where the bishop had ended up. And so we stood up and we went to talk to the arbiter, and they checked the footage of the stream to see what she had done, where had the bishop gone. And actually, the bishop hadn't gone to f5 or g4. The bishop had gone to g5, which is an illegal move. It's a light squared bishop. It can't go to dark square. So ultimately, the arbiter said that this was an illegal move. He gave her a warning and said that, if she makes one more illegal move, she would lose the game, and I got some extra time on my clock. Nemo ended up playing bishop g4, and after this, I went d4 check. This was also the only move, and after she went king b4, I picked up the pawn. Her bishop went back to c8, trying to get to b7. I went back with my bishop, and then after she played bishop b7, I had this beautiful move g2, and now there's no way for her to stop me from promoting the pawn. So after she took my bishop and I made a queen, Nemo resigned and I won this game. And I was so happy after I finished this game, because I think more than anything, I was proud of the fact that in an endgame that could have been a draw, I had the courage to keep fighting, even with only a minute on the clock. And I was brave and confident, and it just made me really happy that I had trusted myself and had the confidence to keep the game going, and that it had led to me winning. So I felt amazing after the game. I also realized that this game was played at an accuracy of 96% by me, which is really high. So I'm really proud of this game. It's probably one of the best classical games I've played this year, and I'm just so happy that I was able to beat a stronger opponent, especially someone that I've almost never beaten online. I was really happy to be able to beat her in classical chess. So this was my game versus Nemo. I'll try to insert a little clip of me after the game where you can see how happy I was. Thank you so much for listening and watching this recap. Hope you're enjoying this tournament. And now I'm going to do my very best to get top 3 in the Botez Chess Invitational. See you all in the recap of my last round. Wish me luck.